Born in the American South, Wells spent her early childhood in Morocco, where her father served as an Air Force lawyer. She learned to speak French there before coming back to the States at the tender age of 5. Her father, always interested in civil rights, changed professions. He went to theology school, the only white man in his class at Howard University, and became a Unitarian minister. Wells' mother, who taught high school English, was active in the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment. It was she that planted the music bug in young Brooksie. In 1965, Wells' father and his best friend, Jim Reeb, went to Selma, Alabama in response to Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s invitation to ministers to join the Selma to Montgomery March. On his first night in Alabama, Reeb was beaten to death by white segregationists after finishing dinner at Walker's Cafe, a historically black restaurant that had opened its doors to white patrons. After Dr. King was shot, young Brooksie joined her father at King's funeral in Atlanta. As a child, she played at Hickory Hill, the home of Robert F. Kennedy, in McLean, Virginia. As the Vietnam era came, Wells' father edited a 1970 book called The People versus Presidential War, with a foreword by J. William Fulbright. He protested against the Vietnam War in Hanoi. From the 6th to the 10th grade, Brooksie grew up in a hotbed of political activism. She lived in a Virginia parsonage owned by the Unitarian Universalist Church, a place where the arts flourished. With her mother's encouragement, she learned to play guitar and was influenced by performers like Eric Anderson, James Taylor, and Bob Dylan.
So that was my childhood, very magical in many ways because we lived in wonderful places and surrounded by the arts. There was lots of music. My mother was a pianist as a child, and she encouraged us all to play piano, so I played since I was 5. Then when I was 13, Daddy brought me a guitar from Mexico. So I went from that to learning how to play guitar because the boys seemed to like it, and got myself a Gibson J50, and it was from 1960, and a little older than me, but not that much. So I ended up playing and going to clubs, going around to different places and learning how to play the guitar, finger picking, Travis picking, watching people like Mississippi John Hurt, huge influence on me, and loving people like Joan Baez, people like James Taylor. James was from Boston, so we'd see him in Livingston around up there, and I would just want to be like them. I would want to do what they did, and I love the writing. I have a degree in English, so I decided to write songs instead of poems. It's really, my mother writes poems, I thought I'd write songs. My dad wrote sermons, so we all wrote something, and I ended up writing songs all my life.
In her junior year, she went to Montreal for the summer with the 1971 Smithsonian Folklife Festival, which was headed by her father's choir director. Because she spoke French, Wells was hired as a hostess for the festival. It was there she was exposed to folk music notables like Vassar Clements, John Hartford, Utah Phillips, Elizabeth Cotton, Mike Seeger, Fat City, and the new Lost City Ramblers. She got to jam with many of them and was treated like an equal. From there, still in college, she began a string of good luck. At 19, she was signed with Bobby Darin as a songwriter at Chapel Music, the largest music publisher in the world. John Lennon's band, Elephant's Memory, was hired to do Wells' demo tape. After graduation, Wells got married and moved to Manhattan. She sang on the first Kid Creole and the Coconuts album and acted in some plays. At Chapel Music, she was exposed to the best and brightest players in the music business, including Paul Schaefer, the Brecker Brothers, Lionel Hampton, and James Brown. She played gigs at Gertie's Folk City and other major New York City clubs. She was on her way to major success in the music business. And then, suddenly, Bobby Darin died, leaving her without a patron in the music business. And soon after, her contract with Chapel Music ended. Real life interfered.
And it got harder and harder. The New York scene was a little rough back then too. Studio 54, lots of drugs. It was a little bit crazy, and I was getting more and more discouraged about how to handle myself in New York on my own. My family was down south. They were in Virginia at the time, and I called my dad and said, come get me. This was a few years down the road, and so my parents came and got me, and I said, I'm going to stay here 2 weeks. And 25 years later, I moved back up north, but I ended up getting in a band and having 2 wonderful children who are doing well, raising kids, and doing children's music, because you can't nurse and rock at the same time.